become a leader in the community and a sought after speaker and consultant. Her advocacy is inspired by her failure to find people who look like her speaking about her experiences. She serves as an advocate by speaking up for marginalized people, fighting for criminal justice reform, and creating time for joy. She's here to tell us about her work with United We Rise. Kamaria, first of all, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. It's an honor. It's an honor and a pleasure.
Absolutely. I consider it a great honor to be able to talk with you and share your story and the tremendous work that you're doing. But as we get into this conversation, Kamaria, tell us, first of all, what is the biggest misconception about people living with HIV?
I think the biggest misconception about people living with HIV is that we did something on purpose to deserve it.
Mm.
That there's some reckoning that's happening in our life and it's manifested through HIV. And I wholeheartedly disagree with that. I mean, things happen to everyone, but I think that's a big misconception that people use to hold people in shame once they've been diagnosed.
Yeah. Now, you personally, you learned of your status during the birth of your daughter. Talk about what that was like for you when you learned of this at the time of giving birth.
So it was a little after giving birth. Backing up, I had hid my pregnancy, so I didn't have prenatal care, and
Mhm.
doctors wouldn't take me on as a patient 5 months into my pregnancy. And the health department was so backlogged that they couldn't schedule me until after my due date, my assumed due date. So I had to register at the hospital without any type of provider guidance, and was on a long list of women that were going to be booked to give birth. And when I finally delivered, I had her naturally. At that moment, like everything that I was scared of changed.
Yeah.
But then 2 weeks later, I was told that if I was trying to breastfeed or anything like that, to bring her in for a consultation with a doctor, and they had some information to give me. And it was in that moment I was like, well, what could possibly be happening? And of course, everything that I could think of could go wrong in my mind popped up because I hid my pregnancy for 5 months. I thought DCF was going to come take my baby or something. Like I was so clueless and so young. So
Hmm.
the doctor finally told me that my daughter had my immune system, so she was testing positive, and that meant that I had HIV, and that I would have to spend the next year giving my daughter medications to make sure she didn't seroconvert. Because a baby, when they're born, they have their mother's immune system, but they build up their own. It takes
Hmm.
about 6 months to a year. They build up their own. So I had to put her through this whole process, and it was really terrifying. It was terrifying. It was something I could have never imagined. My diagnosis was something that I felt should have, if it's going to happen, it should have only affect me. And
Hmm.
to know that I brought this little person into the world and now she's having to be subjected to all this tests and medications and foreign things put in her body, and I can't articulate to her like what mommy did. It was really, really hard, being a brand new mom and going through that. But I truly believe everything happens for a reason. She tested negative a year later.
Wow.
She will be graduating high school this year. And
Wow.
she has been a tremendous blessing. She's my earthly reason for why I do what I do.
Yeah, yeah. Wow, that's amazing. I guess talk about that. I guess the advance in technology and the medicines and things of that nature in the HIV space, how that allowed for your daughter to test positive at one point and then to later test negative. Because I think a lot of mothers have that concern today.
Yeah, and I love talking to new mothers. I love talking to moms about my experience, not to scare them, but just let them know like these fears as bringing life into this world are going to come. And the circumstances that you're handed, you as a mom, just these instincts kick in, and you look for community, you look for support. But when I was told that in the beginning that she was positive, I was like, well, then there's just no way. Like, I don't understand how she could not have HIV.
Hmm.
And it was in that time frame, like the first 3 months, my mother and my grandmother, I've known prayer, but I've never seen them like collectively put hands on my head in the middle of the night, me and the baby in
Yeah.
prayer, and just speaking life over both of us, both of them not even knowing anything about HIV. They just knew that this was something that needed prayer.
Hmm.
And I truly believe, in addition to the science advancements and amazing doctors and amazing treatments that are out there, I believe that that's what got my daughter to be HIV negative, because in my circumstances, I had no prenatal care. I wasn't on treatment. I didn't know my status when I was pregnant.
Hmm.
She was fully exposed. I had her naturally. I didn't have a cesarean. I tried to breastfeed her. I even pumped. When she wouldn't latch on, I would pump and try to give it to her, and she would spit it up.
Hmm.
So there were all these different reasons for why she should be HIV positive today, but she's not.
Wow.
And yes, science is a credit to that, but I also give full credit to God.
Yeah. So talk about that. I mean, what does that do to your faith? You're 21 years old, you're a new mom, you've just got this new revelation in your life, and now you see your mom and your grandmother laying hands on you, praying for you. And like you said, you had known their faith level, but now you've seen that faith level go to a whole new level, if you will. What does it do for your faith?
It strengthened it. It didn't, I never went through, from that experience, I never went through a phase of God, why me? There was
Wow.
just this reckoning in my soul. Like I just felt like this happened to me for a reason. And I started talking to my family members and my friends. And, I was the quote unquote good girl. And no one like would see anything I've done in life on paper and be like, Kamaria is going to be the one that ends up with HIV. Like no one. And not to say like I'm on some high moral ground or anything like that. It was just when I talked to my friends and family, they were just like, we don't get why this is happening to you. And they're sharing experiences with me of things they've done where they know they were putting themselves at risk and it didn't happen to them. And it was just mind blowing. And the more I kept hearing that, the more I was like, okay, God, what's up? What is this purpose you're giving me? And how do I walk in it? And it hasn't been a perfect walk whatsoever. But
Mhm. Yeah.
it's definitely been one that's unshakable. No one can tell me to turn back and stop. At the times I've tried to walk away from doing HIV advocacy, telling my story, there's been 3 times I can count that I've tried to stop. And the way my life flipped upside down when I tried, I just can't walk away from it. So this is it. This is until I leave this earth. And I have no regrets. I wouldn't change a thing that's happened to me because it will alter the mother I became. It would change who I am as a woman. I love myself now. I didn't love myself before when I was out doing what I was doing and having fun doing it. Like I don't have regrets of what I did, but I definitely know how to move forward in
Yeah.
life and how to be more mindful of this is the only body I get. This is the
Yeah.
only one. So I have to take care of it no matter how good something feels, no matter how fun something is. And that's what I try to tell other people when I'm educating and encouraging folks.
Yeah. You said something there a moment ago when you talked about the fact that, again, you weren't living this promiscuous wild life. No one would have ever assumed that you would get HIV. I think that's the thing that really I want to talk about because that's the stigma that's associated with HIV. And that's why it stops so many people from sharing their story because instantly someone is going to assume that they've been promiscuous or been wild and irresponsible in a whole lot of ways and things of that nature. Talk about the importance of really combating the stigma that's associated with HIV.
So this is, I don't know if this is an unpopular opinion, but this is just how I feel about it. And it's how I've parented and how I wish my mom had talked to me. I think when we're raising our young men and women, we miss an opportunity to truly talk to them about their bodies and what pleasure is
Mhm.
and not hold shame with talking about pleasure and letting folks understand that being in a relationship and being with the person that whoever you're going to be with, that there has to be a responsibility of having conversations about what they experienced prior to you being with them. Um, I think lifting the veil of shame around our bodies, I think is a huge piece that can go into it. I don't sit down and tell my daughter, yeah, you can go sleep with him, you can sleep with him, you can sleep with him. I don't do that. But when she has questions about, okay, well, when a guy says this, what does that mean? And when I feel this, how do I answer? How do I respond to that? In addition to prayer, I tell her, okay, this is what that means. This is what a condom is. This is what birth control is. And I also give her the freedom, as I wish my mom had given to me more, to ask questions and not be afraid of aggressive responses or
Yeah.
shameful responses. Receive my questions in love, not because I'm out there actually doing it. It's because I'm curious and I
Right.
want to know. Because maybe I heard a friend talk about something that happened to them, and I want to know, is this experience the same for everyone? And I think that's a piece of it. Because media shows us one thing, Hollywood shows us one thing of what a relationship looks like, what sex looks like, And then you get into these situations that feel magical and they match whatever it is you saw on TV or on the movie screen. Reality sets in and you're like, wait, this is not, wait, my feelings are involved. Like, wait, this isn't what I wanted. This isn't what's happening.
Mm-hmm.
Or things move too fast. There's just so many avenues that I think we skip over out of being uncomfortable and maybe in our own shame. Conversations with my daughter are not easy. I don't enjoy them, but I
Yeah.
feel that I have to be a lot more vulnerable um, as a parent when it comes to letting her know what's real and what really can happen and can't happen, that can help equip her to make better decisions than I did.
Yeah. Yeah. Educating and equipping her supersedes your comfort level.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Like I can't just say, well, it's uncomfortable. I don't want to talk about it. No, I was like, I learned in my advocacy that the times I've learned the most is when I'm uncomfortable. When something's making me
Mm.
uncomfortable, I'm like, okay, why doesn't this feel good? What as I'm learning information, as I'm hearing someone's experience, I'm like, this is unsettling for me. What is it that I'm missing? What blinders have I had on to not see other people's experiences? And that's what's built my advocacy and helped me be a better parent.
Oh, good deal. And I want to talk about that more in just a moment, but I want to, on this whole stigma piece, as you go about and you share your story, I'm sure you've heard it a number of times, but you don't look like you have HIV.
You look good, girl. Yeah.
What does that look like? I mean, help us to understand why it's so important to not go based on looks. Yeah.
Because you can't tell. The guy that I got HIV from, the one night I had a one night stand with a really fine, tall, dark, handsome, good smelling, good hair, if that's what you want to say,
Yeah.
man.
Your
And
dream guy. Yeah.
yeah, like there was no indication that he was sick. And I often tell people you can't even wait for indication that someone looks sick because it may not be HIV. It may be that they have an autoimmune condition like lupus or sickle cell or something like that. But going off appearances can set yourself up for failure instantly. You cannot judge a book by its cover. You can't even look at me and tell like the things about me that make me laugh. Like you just can't look at people and assume things. So
Yeah.
when it comes to HIV, I always tell people don't test yourself through the partner. Like don't rely on your partner to be like, oh, I got tested 2 weeks ago, I'm good. You
Mm-hmm.
don't have to worry about anything. You need to know your status for yourself before you engage in any type of activity. Know what your baseline is. So that way, when you come into a situation, you can say, I know my status was negative. So let's talk about what's happening right now.
Yeah.
Whether an STD scare comes up or whatever, you can't look at people and tell, and it's wrong to look at people and tell. We're all human beings. We're all here having an experience together, and to be judged based off your appearances, especially with HIV and the stigma, then people also add on their morals to you just because they know you have it.
Mm-hmm.
They can make assumptions like me as a mom that I shouldn't be allowed to have any more children after I had the one daughter, or I should have gave her up for adoption. Like suddenly my ability to be a human and have value to my life is suddenly gone just because I have HIV. And that's so not the case. And it's
Yeah.
so unfair. And so many people are walking around carrying the residue of that stigma. Because I call it residue because it may not come directly to your face. Someone may not directly say it to you, but you
Mm-hmm.
feel it. No one
Yeah.
directly told me that I wasn't worth anything for having HIV, but you feel it. You feel it.
Mm. Wow. Wow. So it's hard to believe, I guess, in 2020 that we would still even be talking about the fact that people are judging whether or not someone has an STI or any type of disease based on looks. But the reality of it is that's what's going on. You don't look like you have COVID either, but
There
but
you
anyway,
go. Right? Yeah.
as we continue to move on, I guess the question I would have for you is, how have healthcare professionals helped and supported you in your journey?
Hmm. Hmm. Okay.
Uh-oh.
That's for me where I live. That's a loaded question because there's challenges in my community. The
And
community
tell us where you live again.
I live in Central Florida, so it's Polk County,
Okay.
and we only have the health department as specialty care for people living with HIV.
Hmm.
Um, and it's a stigmatizing situation to go through. They're making improvements, when community speaks up, and we have a new organization here that just opened that provides connection to their treatment and provide social services like housing and food support and things like that. Healthcare professionals, the one helpful thing for me, the last provider I had before she moved, when I was married, my husband recently has passed away, but she was so excited for the opportunity for us to try to have children. And I remember when we first got married, every appointment we went to, she was just kept asking, so have you done this? Are you going to do this? Are you going to try? Are you on birth control? I don't think you should be on birth control. No, I think you should try. And it was making me uncomfortable a little bit. I was like, why is she pressing this so hard? And I always thought in the beginning, I was like, is it because my husband's also positive, or like, what is her problem? And what it was without her articulating it in the language that we see on a fact sheet, it was, I had been on my treatment for years and I was undetectable. The virus had been suppressed in my system for 6 months, longer than 6 months. And so had my husband, and we could conceive naturally. And I never knew that. I'd been seeing her for like 4 or 5 years before I got married. And so one of the most helpful things was how she made me feel whole in my health, that how I'm naturally supposed to like conceive and have a child. I still had that option, because for years I thought that was off the table. I thought if I wanted to have another child, I would have to go through like IVF um or just not conceive, or if I did, then I would have to have a C-section. None of that is the case for me if I wanted to have children. I am now 38 and I'm done. Like, I don't want any more kids. But just the fact that she was so excited and so encouraging, and then this U=U messaging starts becoming more and more um, elevated in different communities of undetectable equals untransmittable. I think since the treatments have been introduced, the 1-a-day treatments, U=U is probably one of the most empowering things for people living with HIV to hear, because there is something you feel when you're diagnosed. You feel like a piece of your humanity is gone. Like suddenly you cannot, or you're not supposed to accomplish or achieve anything that you may have had hopes for, whether that's having children, getting married, donating blood, which we still can't do that. But, just different things that may have been in your mind before, being able to be a part of this collective experience, being told that, no, you can still do certain things because you're on your treatment. I don't know. It's just it's a life changer for me and many other people that I've talked to.
Yeah, yeah. It sounds like she really helped you in a whole lot of ways there.
She did.
Yeah. I guess so. How did you connect with? Currently, you're working with United We Rise. How did you connect with United We Rise?
United We Rise, I want to say they sent out like a blanket invitation to Black leaders that they knew in the HIV community. And I had just started at the Sarah Project as a community organizer. So I got tagged as being the Black person on staff to be a part of this convening and going to the different meetings and being in an all Black space really excited me. And I just really wanted to be a part. In the beginning, I didn't quite know what the vision was and what we were going to be birthing. And so now that I am a part of it and I get to bring the information and the experiences that are happening in this planning into other spaces and say that these are the issues that Black people are experiencing, is helpful, because I'm just one Black woman. I can't speak for all Black women.
Yeah.
So when I'm listening to other Black women working in immigration spaces or other Black women working in research and treatment spaces, that helps inform how I show up in my policy advocacy space. So it's a very affirming space to be in, and I'm very proud and excited to be a part of their work.
Yeah, yeah. So you guys are doing your first virtual conference here just in a couple of days, really. Talk about the role that you will be playing. And it really, I can't go over the fact that as you began to talk about United We Rise, there was like this smile, this almost like a permanent smile that just got planted on your face. What is the joy that you feel in working with this organization?
This is really selfish and personal for me.
Okay.
So I'm always transparent. Growing up, I wasn't around a lot of Black kids. My
Okay.
mom was in the military. I was one of 2 Black students in my whole elementary class. And the only reason the other Black girl was there is because her mom was a teacher. So um, she got a different treatment than I did. So I've always been in spaces where I just didn't feel whole. Like I didn't feel whole in my identity as a Black person.
Wow.
Um, I didn't realize that until I got to college. I went to Florida A&M, and that was an eye opener. That was a whole cultural shift for me. And I loved it. And so when I left because I got pregnant and came back into this world of, doing advocacy and trying to figure out life, I couldn't quite find that space again of like, where are my people?
Yeah.
And being a part of this convening, it's not just what can I bring to the table for advocacy and my leadership. It's what are we learning collectively? And it just reminds me of that good old HBCU vibe. And you can't manufacture it. You can't find it anywhere else unless you're with your community that you trust, that reflects you, you're like-minded. And even if you're not like-minded, you're able to have disagreements and debates and still come to the end of the day saying, but this is what the big picture is and this is what we're going to accomplish. So being able to strategize and pull all these different resources together for this convening, like the smile is because I'm excited. It's been
Yeah.
a long road. I wasn't fully engaged in all the planning. The people that have been like at the top level planning, I'm blown away by how they were planning, and still I'm watching them show up in other spaces. And like, how are you doing all of this? So I just know it's going to be amazing because, like my aunt says, when you put your foot in something, it's just going to turn out delicious. So I just can't wait. I really can. I'm very, very excited. It's
So
going to
you
be
put your foot in and you kind of just swishing it around and all that.
yeah.
Sure it gets all between your toes.
Yes, all between your toes and wiggle them a little bit. Yeah. Yeah.
And you may have given us a glimpse of it, but what exactly is the mission of United We Rise?
So the mission has been really formulated by Black-led organizations, people that are Black. No one else has been coming in saying, no, we think you should do this. And it's built to unite and mobilize a collective of leaders on the intersection of everything we experience. So from mass incarceration to HIV to sexual identity, gender identity, immigration, all of these different issues that impact our lives that may possibly impact a small population of folks. But when we come together, we're all affected by it. Just because I don't work in immigration every day doesn't mean I'm not affected by the policies that are written and by the administration that implements a harmful policy towards our people. So our mission is really just, it's driven by us, for us, and it's helping to inform what needs to be changed, what needs to come off the table, what needs to come off the chopping block, and what can we build from removing the harm. Like once we remove all the pieces that are harmful to our community, what then do we come together and rise up for? So
Yeah.
I feel like that's what our mission is about.
Okay, I like it. I like it. With all the advances that we talked a little bit earlier about the advancement that is taking place in the HIV space, with all of that, why do you think African Americans are still so affected by this disproportionately?
Hmm. Hmm. There are so many different answers to that.
Hmm.
But I think it's because our narrative, our culture, our thoughts, our mindsets aren't the ones that are at the forefront. And that's for any marginalized community. There are people making decisions for us, but are not including us in the power of making that decision. I often say, like, even in the HIV space, there's times where I'm wanted to serve on a board or to serve in some capacity, and money may have been received like as a grant for a certain demographic of people to be in this space.
Mm-hmm.
And I always find that our presence is always wanted, but our power is always denied.
Mm.
And if we don't start shifting that dynamic, we're going to continue to repeat the history of being oppressed. And it's not all up to us. Like if we could flip this upside down and not be in the situations we are, we would have done it a long time ago. But it's going to take a collective of allies and true resources, not just here's a check, but you have to do XYZ with it. No, here's a check. Here's room to make a plan. Here's the power to distribute the money however you see fit. And then here's an evaluation that will help you get more resources, not an evaluation that's going to cut you off because the funding ran dry or because someone else bigger, better, and badder decided that they were going to have the funding instead. It's really
Mm-hmm.
about not denying our power once you ask for our presence.
Wow. And you're how old again?
I'm 38.
That's considered, I mean, 38 is considered still a millennial, isn't it?
I mean, that's what they say. Like my daughter doesn't agree, but that's what they say.
Just say, you just said that so well. So thank you for your work and what you're doing. I guess the question becomes now, though, how has the pandemic affected your work?
My work personally, it's this year. I don't know why sometimes I feel selfish even saying this, but this year it's been collectively hard for all of us. I spent the majority of my year and will spend a great deal of time moving on forward grieving. So thankfully, the organization I work for, and I love this is why I love the HIV community because space has been given to me to not have to ask for permission to grieve. Um, I was told to take off as much time as I needed, come back when I'm ready. And even in the midst of that, like if you need to step back, Kamaria, it's cool. So I love that there's always space held for me in
Mhm.
this work. The pandemic shifted a lot of the travel, of course. Like I did a lot of travel 2019. But I really am not that upset about it. Because we were still able to get our work done. Like the Sarah Project is launching an institute at the end of this year that'll train 12 advocates throughout the next year in policy advocacy. So the pandemic didn't stop that. Everything that we did in person, we were able to springboard and do it virtually, even our training academy. Uh, the only things I have concerns about are like folks that are on the front lines that are doing outreach, that are going in communities and doing testing,
Mhm.
and how creative they've had to be in navigating the different barriers that they have up for that when they're already in barriers in place. I've had conversations with folks who've had to experience challenges around that. But I really think with the HIV community and the pandemic, we didn't allow the pandemic to hold us back from the work that we know is still important and needed to be done, especially during an election year. Like we just weren't going to sit down and be like, oh, well, it's the pandemic. We fought even harder. And the resiliency in this community is something that um, I don't know, I haven't seen in other spaces. And it's just something I'm very proud of.
Yeah. Well, you can certainly tell the joy, again, as you talked about United We Rise and just the work that you do. You can tell that you really enjoy what you do. Um, so much so to where I wouldn't have known that it sounds like you have recently been widowed. And I wouldn't have known that because of the joy that's in your spirit. And that's a good thing. But I guess I'll have to ask you, how recent was the passing of your husband?
It'll be a year on the 15th.
Okay.
So it was December of last year. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I just got back from a trip from work. We spent one beautiful weekend together, and he passed in his sleep. He was, yeah.
Okay. Okay. Well, definitely our condolences with you on that. I know this could be a difficult time of year, but you seem to be in good spirits. So that's a good thing. That's a good thing. And your daughter's getting ready to graduate high school. So,
Yes. She just did her SATs Saturday, and it's happening too fast.
so the question becomes, what's next for you? I mean, what do you ultimately want your legacy to be?
Oh, wow, I love that question. I love that question because I love talking about legacies. I just, and this answer has shifted for me in the past year. I just want to be a source for others to be able to know that there's life beyond a diagnosis, that they don't have to be hindered by the things that happen to them in life. Even with COVID, like there's life beyond COVID. And that's maybe an idealistic, super optimistic statement because a lot of folks aren't seeing that right now, but it's something I hold on to.
Hmm.
So ultimately, my legacy is just to make sure that there's always optimism and there's always hope and there's always a glance towards the horizon, knowing that it's possible, that it's within reach, it's not completely out of reach. Um, I'm just very always trying to be optimistic about things. Um, I tell people, in addition to having HIV, I have chronic optimism because it's just that silver lining. It's just always there. And the moments that it's not, I figure out a way to sew and find one. If it's a gray thread, then I'm going to use it and make it silver. So my legacy is just always holding on to hope and making sure that those around me feel that hope as well. The minute you feel hopeless, that's when things can turn and it's hard to come back from. Not to say I haven't been there because I have.
Wow. It's just been a pleasure talking with you, and just to hear your story and just to hear how you've navigated this journey and how you're continuing to help others. I think that's extremely important when you can, like you said, find hope, hang on to your hope, and then also reach back and help someone else to find theirs as well. So thank you so much,
Thank
for the
you.
time to share your story. I appreciate it.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure.
All right.
All right.
And how can folks contact you?
Oh, so all the socials, but I have different names. So if you just search my name, Kamaria Laffrey, that's on Facebook. I'm on Twitter as Mrs. underscore Cam, Kam. I'm on Instagram as InstaCam3. And then I have another Instagram. It's called Empowered underscore Legacies.
All right. Good deal. Well, Kamaria Laffrey, thank you so much